Hey guys, welcome to the Sleepy Science. Tonight the forest is listening. You step into the hush of evening, where shadows stretch like slow thoughts, and the air is filled with the earthy breath of moss, bark, and the distant sigh of leaves. Somewhere above, the canopy sighs, not with wind, but with something older, deeper, the kind of whisper that doesn't use words. You haven't walked far, but already it feels like you've left time behind. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Where are you listening from tonight? And what time is it over there? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself walking barefoot through pine needles and soft soil. There's no real path, just a gentle downward slope as if the land itself is guiding you. All around, trees lean in, not menacing, more like curious. Their limbs reach but never grab, their trunks stand but do not block, and you begin to wonder, what do they know? A breeze slips past your ear, but it's not wind alone. The sound is layered, rustling branches above, a slight creak of a nearby tree adjusting its weight, and then something else. A low, steady murmuring beneath it all, as if 1,000 stories are being told at once, all in a language you've never quite learned. Yet somehow you feel it. Not in your ears, but somewhere behind the ribs. You're entering a place where stillness is not silence, and silence is not absence. The forest is speaking. It always has been. Scientists used to think trees were solitary beings, still, passive, unaware, but that idea has fallen like autumn leaves. Now we know that trees are highly connected organisms, capable of astonishing forms of communication. They exchange nutrients, warning signals, and even chemical gifts, and they do it with patience so profound it almost feels like magic. Let that settle for a moment. Magic you can measure. Tonight you'll follow those whispers deeper and deeper. You duck beneath a low-hanging branch. It brushes your shoulder like a grandmother's hand. Comforting. Ancient. You pause to listen, not just with ears, but with skin and spine and soles of your feet. The sound isn't really sound anymore. It's vibration, a thrum, a lullaby in a forgotten dialect. The forest canopy, miles wide and hundreds of feet tall, is like the dome of a cathedral, and like cathedrals, it was built over centuries. Leaves are its stained glass, birds, its choirs, and its sermons, whispers in bark and shadow. Did you know that certain trees release chemical compounds when wounded, and nearby trees respond, sometimes by increasing their own defenses? It's not reactive, it's responsive. It's not just self-preservation, it's kin preservation. Trees care for each other. Sometimes they even nurse stumps, dead, leafless stubs, keeping them alive through shared roots for decades. That's weird, right? Tender, a bit spooky, also kind of hopeful. You stop to rest against the wide trunk of a cedar that seems to lean back, as if to support your tired spine. You're not alone in your listening. Owls blink from hidden nooks. Insects buzz with hushed reverence. Somewhere nearby, a fox rustles through the undergrowth like a wandering thought, but even they aren't the main characters here. The trees are. You run your fingers across the bark. It's rough, yes, but not random. Every groove is a record. Every ridge is memory. The cedar doesn't flinch, doesn't speak back, but somehow you know you've been heard. It's strange how we've always imagined communication in the image of ourselves, spoken, rapid, loud. But the forest teaches you that silence can be crowded with meaning. That slowness is not absence. That messages don't have to be broadcast. They can be breathed. A quirky thought slips in. If trees do talk, what do they gossip about? Maybe who grew the tallest this season. Maybe which squirrel is stealing all the pine cones. Maybe how annoying the woodpecker is. Or maybe, just maybe, they talk about us. Loud, fast, flame-loving humans. The way we zip by, blind to their ancient conversations. There's an old legend from the Hoare rainforest, deep in the Pacific Northwest, that says if you lie perfectly still beneath the sitkas, the trees will teach you the language of the forest in your dreams. Not words, but impressions. Not logic, but knowing. So, you lie back. The moss beneath you is cool and damp. The trees loom above, not as watchmen but as sentinels. Time bends, breath slows, and the canopy above begins to shimmer, not with light but with the suggestion of sound. If language had roots, this would be it. Even now, some researchers argue whether these tree communications are deliberate or incidental. Are the signals sent intentionally, or just natural responses to environmental stress? Is there agency behind the whisper, or are we simply hearing echoes and projecting meaning? But maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe the question isn't whether trees mean to speak, but whether you are quiet enough to hear. In the distance, thunder rumbles, a soft warning, not of a storm, but of a shift. The forest is always shifting, growing, adapting, remembering. Remember that. The forest remembers. You open your eyes, and the colours have changed. Greens deeper, shadows longer, sky darker. Night is falling, and with it, the volume of the forest rises, not in decibels, but in weight. You're only just beginning to understand the depth of this place, to grasp the slowness with which trees think, respond, and speak. One of them, tall and ancient, bark like a river of cracks, seems to nod gently toward the east, as if inviting you. You rise, knees soft, eyes wide, ears open. You step forward, following that unspoken suggestion. Because here, directions aren't given, they're felt. And the forest always has more to say. You follow the ancient tree's subtle gesture, an almost imperceptible lean toward the east, though you're not quite sure if the tree moved or if the world around it did. But the invitation is clear. You walk slowly, each step quieter than the last. The ground is pillowed with damp leaves, pine needles, and the soft sponginess of moss, a living carpet woven by centuries. The forest darkens, but you don't feel lost. Instead, you feel expected, like you've arrived precisely on time for something sacred and secret. And maybe a little mischievous, like the forest has a joke it's been waiting all day to tell you. As your eyes adjust, so does your mind. Things you once thought of as background, branches creaking, wind nudging leaves, distant bird calls, begin to sound like parts of a larger rhythm. Not music exactly, but cadence. A slow, deliberate beat, like breath. Inhale, exhale. And somewhere between, the trees whisper again. They aren't whispering words, they're whispering intention. You pass beneath a cluster of beech trees, their trunks smooth like ancient bones polished by centuries of rain. And here you feel it, like stepping into a room mid-conversation. The air is thick with something unspoken but alive. It wraps around your shoulders like a borrowed cloak. You're no longer just a guest. You're part of it now. You remember something: trees release airborne signals, chemicals called volatile organic compounds when under threat. Some trees, upon smelling this chemical alarm, boost their own defenses. Scientists have even noted that different types of VOCs are released for different threats. One mix for insect invasions, another for physical wounds, another still for drought stress. The forest doesn't just speak, it differentiates. It has dialects, context, intuition. And yet, you wonder if trees can scream in chemical sense. Do they also laugh? Maybe laughter is the shimmer of sunlight through spring leaves. Maybe it's the sudden dance of a branch when nothing touched it, or the way mushrooms pop up like mischievous punctuation marks after rain. You reach a clearing bathed in silver. Moonlight filters down in uneven patches, highlighting the gnarled roots of an ancient oak that looks like it could tell stories about the Ice Age. You sit again, spine against trunk. The tree hums, not in your ears but in your ribs. It's low, steady, and warm. There's a term for what you're feeling: the wood wide web, a nickname for the underground fungal network that connects tree roots in complex webs of communication and resource exchange. Through this mycorrhizal network, trees can transfer sugars, chemical signals, and even warning cues. Older mother trees have been shown to nurture younger saplings by sending them nutrients, even at their own expense. It's SUP's not a battle out here. It's SUP's a community. Still, some scientists debate how much of this interaction is conscious or cooperative. Are these exchanges altruistic or opportunistic? Is the forest generous or just efficient? You lean your head back and look up into the canopy. Even in the dark, it's a mosaic branch, overlapping branch, leaf brushing leaf. There's an elegance to it, not random, not chaotic, just slow. The slowness is what gets to you. We race through life with inboxes and notifications, with microwaves and countdown clocks. Trees move in decades, in centuries. Their patience is its own kind of power. And yet they're certainly not passive. A recent discovery found that some trees will reduce their photosynthesis to conserve energy when neighboring trees are struggling, like holding your breath because your friend can't breathe. That kind of empathy, if we can even call it that, defies what we expect from plants. But maybe it only defies our expectations because we've been taught to ignore what moves too slowly to see. Here's a quirky thought. If you could speed up time, would trees look like dancers? Arms raised, always moving toward the light? Would we see a ballet of growth and lean, retreat and reach? Some researchers have time-lapsed forest footage, tree trunks that sway and lean, shift and settle, like they're breathing, or praying, or stretching after an old ache. You feel your own body mirror that motion, shoulders loosening, jaw softening, lungs deepening. You've joined the tempo of the forest without even realizing it. You lie flat on the forest floor, arms spread. The soil cradles you, roots thread below like neural pathways. You imagine signals pulsing around you, carbon whispers, nitrogen sighs, ancient carbon messages carried like letters passed in the dark. The forest is thinking, and now, so are you, but slower. There's something comforting about knowing you're not the smartest thing in the forest, not the oldest, not even close. You're just one more guest in a very long line of wanderers. A squirrel scrambles by with a pine cone, pauses to stare, then vanishes. Your presence is noted, not feared. A deer blinks from between two trunks, then dips its head and moves on. The forest has seen you, and it's not alarmed. That sips the gift to be known and not disturbed. You run your hand across the forest floor, twigs, moss, small stones. One stone is particularly smooth, almost warm. You pocket it for no reason other than it feels right. Isn't that how most meaningful things begin? There's a light mist settling now, as if the forest is exhaling. You watch as it clings to leaves and weaves between branches like invisible silk. You wonder if the mist carries messages too, and what stories it's overheard. Above you, one tree leans closer. Its shadow falls over your chest like a blanket. Not cold, protective. You close your eyes, and for a moment you feel suspended, not in the air, but in time. If trees can speak, maybe they can also remember. And if they remember, maybe they carry our stories too. The ones we've lost, the ones we buried, the ones too soft or sacred to speak aloud. The hum returns, not a sound, a presence, a pulse beneath the soil. You feel it echo in your fingertips. You are not alone, you never were. And the forest is not silent. It's just been waiting for you to slow down enough to hear. You don't move right away. You linger there beneath the leaning tree, spine still pressed to its bark, breath gently synchronized with the hush of the world around you. Somewhere in the distance, an owl calls, not a sharp cry, but a question stretched across the silence. And as the echo fades, you feel the forest shift again, not in shape, but in intention. The trees, you realize, are listening. Not metaphorically, not symbolically, literally. They've evolved the ability to respond to sound. Yes, actual sound. Roots have been observed growing toward the source of water trickling through pipes, responding to the acoustic vibrations alone. It's subtle, it's slow, but it's real. And now you wonder, what else do they hear? Your heartbeat? The scrape of your shoes? Your thoughts? It's a whimsical idea that your worries, your daydreams, your secret wishes might rise from your skin like steam and get tucked away inside the grooves of a nearby birch. Absorbed, catalogued, whispered about by root tendrils over midnight tea. A breeze picks up, soft like a sigh through a wooden flute. It weaves its way past your ear, rustling leaves and sending shivers down your arms. But it's not cold, just conversational. There's a maple nearby. Not ancient, not young. Midlife, perhaps, if trees had mortgages or bucket lists. Its branches tilt in your direction like a curious neighbour. Its leaves flutter faster than the others, catching the moonlight like tiny hands waving for your attention. You walk toward it, drawn not by light, but by sound, or maybe silence. The maple doesn't speak in words, but you feel a pressure in the air, like a question waiting to be asked. You place your hand on its trunk, and again there's that subtle pulse, faint, rhythmic, like checking for a heartbeat inside a cathedral. It's here that the forest shows you something strange. A memory, perhaps. Not yours, not entirely real, but dream-tinted. You see a wildfire from decades ago, flames licking the edges of old growth, smoke blooming like ink in water. And yet, amidst the devastation, some trees survive, thanks in part to their neighbours. Research has shown that trees can warn each other of fire through root signals and chemical alerts, prompting nearby trees to close pores, shed leaves, or adjust moisture levels. The forest doesn't just react. It plans. You blink, and the image fades, but your fingers still rest on the bark, grounding you. It's humbling, isn't it? Knowing trees, stationary and quiet, carry survival strategies older than civilization. Still touching the maple, you lean your ear against its side. It's subtle, but you hear something, or maybe feel it, like a low vibration, a whisper beneath your skin. There's a term for this: cavitation, the tiny popping noises trees make when water moves through their xylem. Some scientists describe it as the tree crying out during drought stress. Others suggest it's just physics, but standing here, ear pressed to bark, it doesn't sound mechanical. It sounds alive. And so you wonder, if you stood long enough, still enough, could you learn their language? Would it come to you not in grammar but in rhythm, not in phrases but in seasons? Maybe the language of trees isn't built on nouns and verbs, but on changes of colour, of posture, of scent and sap. You look up again. The canopy is more than a roof. It's a conversation. Leaves shimmer and shift, branches reach and release. Shadows flicker with quiet emotion. You catch sight of a bird, something small and tawny, dipping between limbs with purpose. Not flying randomly, but navigating. It knows the trail, as if the trees themselves are helping guide the way. That idea makes you smile. What if trees map the skies too? It's not so far-fetched. Some indigenous traditions speak of trees as keepers of direction. Ancient navigators used the shape of branches, the growth of moss, the angle of lean to find their way. These weren't superstitions. They were observations, proof that trees archive experience in every fibre. You step off the path again. If there was ever a path, and follow the bird. It flits ahead, always just a few beats away, like a dream you can almost remember. The trees here are taller, thinner, more tightly packed. They speak in whispers. You imagine their voices willowy and high, full of old laughter, like the laughter of someone who's seen too much to be easily startled. You hear something shift behind you, not threatening, just present. And then something unexpected, the smell of citrus. You stop, close your eyes, inhale. There it is again. Not strong, but there. A sharp, bright note amid the earthy perfume of loam and lichen. The source? You look around. A pine, tall and noble, stands near. Its bark is cracked in constellations. You step closer and realize the scent is from resin, a wound perhaps, sealed with sap. Pines exude these complex chemicals, not just to heal but to communicate. Some compounds warn of danger, others attract helpful insects to eat the bad ones, some even coat the wounds of neighbours. You run your fingers across the sticky amber, it glows faintly in the moonlight. You feel like you've just read a sentence, carved by time itself. And just like that, the moment shifts again. The forest grows quieter. The bird is gone, but in its place, a new companion, stillness. Not the absence of sound, but the fullness of it. You stand there, the tree behind you, the sap on your fingers, and you realize you're not hearing silence, you're hearing waiting. The forest is patient. It waits for spring. It waits for water. It waits for seeds carried by wind, for deer to pass, for time to bend back again. And now it waits for you. Not to speak, not to act, just to listen. You kneel and press your palm to the ground. The soil is soft and cool, and somewhere below, roots pulse like slow lightning. You close your eyes, feeling your own breath mirror that subterranean rhythm. Your thoughts stretch, slow, soften. You feel not like an observer anymore, but an extension, a temporary tendril, a borrowed root. And just before sleep takes you for a moment, you wonder, if you could plant a thought like a seed, what would grow? You don't just quite wake, but you shift. The ground beneath you feels different now, warmer, softer, as though the forest itself has pulled a quilt of moss around your shoulders. You're still in the same glade, beneath the towering trees, but the light has changed. It's not brighter, it's not darker, just sideways. A twilight that doesn't belong to any particular hour. Above you, the branches have thickened into a woven lattice, like the vaulted ceiling of a green cathedral. Each leaf is outlined in gold, kissed by some unseen moon, and the air tastes of cedar, damp stone, and old honey. And then you hear it again, the whisper of the trees. But this time it sips different. Not wind, not bark, something in between. It feels like being watched, not with suspicion, but with curiosity, as if the forest is trying to remember who you are. You rise slowly, brushing soil from your clothes, and begin to walk deeper. Not because you know where you're going, but because your body already remembers a path your mind has yet to recall. With each step, you notice how interconnected everything feels. Roots overlap like threads in an invisible rug. Vines curl and loop across trunks, not randomly, but with intention, as though this forest has been choreographed. And you, somehow, are part of the dance. You pause beside an oak, whose trunk is so wide it would take 10 people to encircle it. Carved into its side is a gnarled knot shaped like an eye. Not realistic, but close enough to make you hesitate. You lean in. The eye doesn't blink, but you swear it's watching. It's a reminder of something subtle but profound. Trees remember. Yes, memory in a sense exists within their rings. Each year, a new circle forms beneath the bark, encoding droughts, floods, disease, abundance. Scientists can read these rings like a diary written in silence. A tree struck by lightning in 1783 still carries that scar, echoing in the width and shape of every ring that came after. And just as trees remember lightning, they also remember kindness. There's a forest in Germany where beech trees have been observed sharing sugars with their weaker neighbours, not just relatives, but strangers. Through a mycorrhizal network, fungal threads weaving through the soil, trees distribute resources like a quiet underground welfare system. It's called the Wood Wide Web. That makes you smile. You picture little arboreal emails, root-to-root messages marked urgent, incoming drought, or aphid infestation on aisle 4. But then your thoughts deepen. If these organisms can recognize kin, share resources, and hold memories, are they conscious? Is the forest aware of itself? That debate still splits the scientific world. Some argue we're anthropomorphizing, a fancy word for projecting human traits onto non-human things. But others suggest consciousness might not require a brain. That awareness could emerge in distributed systems like slime molds or neural networks or maybe even trees. You pause beneath a willow. Its branches hang low, trailing the ground like sleeves too long for their arms. You duck beneath them, and the world grows quieter still. Inside the willow's curtain, the air changes. Cooler, wet, a droplet forms on a leaf tip and falls on your hand. It smells like childhood. Not your childhood specifically, just childhood in general. Like puddles and dirt and the moment before you're told it's time to come inside. And then you hear a clicking. Soft, irregular. You crouch to the forest floor and peel back a mat of leaves. There, barely visible, is the white thread of a mycelium network. Not a plant, not an animal, a kingdom of its own. Fungi. These threads connect trees across vast distances, acting like an internet beneath the soil. When one tree is attacked by pests, it releases chemical signals. The fungi pick them up and relay the warning, prompting other trees to activate their defenses in advance. Some species even exchange information between entirely different plant types. It's as if mushrooms have become the forest's telephone switchboard operators. You wonder if the mushrooms ever eavesdrop. Another gentle laugh bubbles up inside you. You rise again and keep walking. The trail is invisible, but your body continues to follow it. Your skin tingles, not from cold, but from recognition, like walking into a room you've never seen but somehow know by heart. The trees begin to change now. Their bark is smoother, their leaves are broader, Their scent carries notes of vanilla, smoke, and something spicy. You've crossed into a new region of the forest, one that feels older but also more playful. You catch sight of a tree with bark that peels in papery sheets. On one of them, scribbled in patterns only visible by moonlight, are insect trails that resemble an ancient script. Not English, not Latin, but something older. What if ants are the forest sex calligraphers? You feel silly, and yet completely serious. Isn't it that the nature of dreaming? You run your hand across the papery bark. It crinkles under your touch, releasing a puff of scent, nutmeg and dusk. You inhale deeply, and it slows your pulse. A few steps ahead, you find a small stone altar, not built exactly, but formed naturally where roots grew around boulders and vines draped over the top like ceremonial ribbons. Upon its surface lies a single acorn, uncracked, waiting. You don't touch it. Some things are meant to be looked at, not held. And besides, the air is changing again. A gentle vibration hums up through your feet. It sips, not threatening. It sips, not warning. It sits anticipation. Something sips coming, but not from the trees. From below, and that sips when you hear the voice. Not in your ears, not even in your mind. It speaks through your bones. It says, simply, "Are you listening now?" You don't respond. You just stand still, very still, and let the forest finish its thought. The hum doesn't fade. It deepens. You don't hear it so much as feel it, like the forest has its own pulse, beating in a rhythm too slow for human ears, but perfectly tuned to the roots and stones beneath your feet. Each beat reverberates upward through the soil, into your legs, into your spine, until it brushes the base of your skull and settles like a soft weight behind your eyes. And in that moment, the silence becomes more than just absence of noise. It becomes presence. Alive, watching, listening. You step forward again, slower now, as though walking on holy ground. The forest narrows, the trees lean in closer, their trunks curved slightly, like old monks bending in mid-prayer. Every leaf seems to tilt in your direction, not dramatically, just enough to remind you you're not alone here. You reach out and brush the side of a nearby trunk. The bark is smooth, almost polished, like river stones warmed by sun. You press your palm against it and hold it there. Nothing happens. And then something does. A memory, but not yours. It comes like a breeze in reverse, flowing into you. A long summer of heavy rains, the joy of spring sap rising through xylem, the sharp pain of a beaver's bite, the tickle of beetle legs exploring a mossy scar. Not images, not thoughts, sensations. The tree is showing you its life. And you realize this whole time you've been under the impression that trees are slow, passive, unmoving. But that sips only by human standards. Trees don't move like we do because they're busy participating in a different kind of time. A deeper, slower chronicle. One where a blink takes a season and a conversation can last a century. You pull your hand away gently, as though excusing yourself from a sacred story mid-sentence. And the forest doesn't sit mind. It understands. After all, it has patience. That's when the wind returns. Not harsh, but intentional. It threads its way through the trees in spiral patterns, making the canopy above you sway like the surface of a green ocean. You hear leaves brushing together, not randomly, but in bursts of rhythm, pauses, pulses. You wonder, could this be syntax? Some scientists think so. They've observed trees releasing chemical compounds into the air, not just for defense or reproduction, but in patterns that suggest a kind of messaging system. When one tree is attacked by insects, nearby trees release matching warning chemicals, even if they haven't been touched. That sip's not reflex. That tip's response. That sip's language. A different kind, sure, but language nonetheless. And then you remember something oddly delightful. Giraffes have been known to eavesdrop on trees. In certain parts of Africa, acacia trees emit ethylene gas when grazed upon, warning nearby acacias to pump their leaves full of bitter tannins. Giraffes, being clever snackers, will walk upwind to avoid leaves that have been warned. You smile again, because even the air is talking. You sit down beneath a redwood, now taller than anything you've seen before. Its trunk is so wide it could house a small chapel. You lean your back against it, and it feels like resting against time itself. You close your eyes for just a second, and in that second you fall deeper. Not asleep, not awake, just further in. Now you're seeing with different eyes, ones that don't need light. The forest opens like a map, its roots glowing in fine filaments of white and gold, stretching for miles in every direction. You see messages traveling these threads, bursts of chemical light like fireflies moving in slow procession. You see trees wrapped around each other underground, roots fused, their vascular systems interwoven like veins in a single giant body. You realize maybe the forest isn't set many trees. Maybe it seps one living organism expressed in many forms. A green cathedral with millions of pillars all singing the same quiet hymn. And then, just as softly, your awareness returns. The roots dim. The forest fades back to its earthly shape. You stir still leaning against the redwood, but you stared not the same. Your breath has slowed. Your chest rises and falls like waves pulled by a distant moon. You feel more here than you did when you arrived, and yet less you, as if the forest has worn away your edges a little, rounded your thoughts, smoothed your urgency. You rise again, and the redwood seems to nod. You continue forward, not to a destination, but because movement itself feels like part of the conversation. The forest responds in kind. A path opens gently, ferns parting, branches lifting slightly, as if to say, yes, this way. You follow, and as you walk, a question stirs, one you hadn't known to ask. What do trees dream of? You imagine their dreams would be long, vast, unfolding in centuries rather than minutes. Maybe they dream of rainfall, or the rhythm of bird wings, or the sound roots make when they grow toward water in the dark. Or maybe they dream of us, not as threats, but as echoes. Because after all, we are made of trees too. Our bones nourished by calcium from forest soils, our breath a gift from chlorophyll, our memories shaped in wooden rooms beneath timbered beams. You think about how many poems have compared veins to roots, how many lovers have carved their names in bark, how many wishes have been tied to branches and left to sway in the wind. You feel the forest exhale again, and it feels like a sigh of recognition, as though for this one brief night you are both speaking the same silent language. And neither of you needs to be understood, just heard. The path curves, not sharply but with the kind of graceful bend that suggests it was never carved, it was simply found. You tread carefully, not out of fear but reverence. Each footfall feels like a note in a larger song composed by centuries of wind and root, rainfall and renewal. It's the music of patience, of life not rushing to happen but simply allowing itself to be. Above you, birds shift in their nests. Some are asleep, tucked into feathery stillness. Others rustle faintly, whispering the last secrets of the day to the dark. You wonder if the trees are listening, not just passively, like an audience, but actively translating every chirp and flutter into signals passed through roots and mycelium, logging each moment like monks copying verses by candlelight. Because here's something delightful. Some trees, when stressed or injured, release ultrasonic vibrations, tiny popping pulses beyond the range of human ears. Scientists have recorded them. They don't yet know exactly what these sounds mean. Are they cries for help? Alerts? Expressions of pain? Or maybe you stop walking for a moment, struck by the idea that this forest might be full of sound, just not the kind our ears are wired to hear, like a whisper in a dream, or a radio station from another world. And now, as your awareness softens even further, you begin to tune in, not with your ears, but with your presence. You feel layers of existence unfolding around you, each with its own rhythm. The insects click and buzz in a rhythmic poetry. The frogs chorus from a distant stream, their voices like little drums rolling out across the undergrowth. And beneath it all, the faint, low frequency of trees breathing in carbon, breathing out oxygen, breathing you. A circle so elegant it almost feels like a spell. You pass a young sapling now, barely shoulder height. Its leaves shimmer like silk in the breeze, and you feel something from it, not sentience in the human sense, but curiosity, as if it's aware of you in some primitive, innocent way, like a kitten pawing at sunlight. And you think this little tree is already connected, already part of the network, already listening. That sips the astonishing part. Even the youngest roots can speak. They reach out, touching fungi, bonding with strands of hyphae in the soil. The resulting alliance is what scientists call the Mycorrhizal network, but you probably heard it by its nickname, the Wood Wide Web. You chuckle softly. It's an adorably human way of trying to describe something ancient and organic, but it's apartment, because beneath your feet, stretching miles in every direction, is a living internet of fungi and root, transmitting sugars, water, chemical messages, even warning signals between trees. It sits not just connection, it sucks communication. And here's a strange little fact. Some trees will actually sacrifice resources for others. A healthy tree will send carbon through its roots to nourish a struggling neighbor, not just a relative, either. Sometimes a different species altogether, like a birch helping a fir, or a pine feeding a cedar. Why? No one knows. Maybe because they've evolved together for so long they no longer see each other as competition but as kin. Or maybe it's something simpler. Maybe compassion isn't just a human invention. You tilt your head back, looking at the stars between the branches. They blink slowly, filtered through needled lace and leaf, and you think about how much of this world is built on cooperation. Moss growing on bark, lichens, symbiosis between algae and fungus, covering stones, tiny nitrogen-fixing bacteria living inside the roots of alders, helping them grow in poor soil. Nature isn't just red in tooth and claw. It's also generous. It also shares. The wind brushes your shoulder like a companion's hand. You look around and notice the forest is thicker now. The trees older, the ground spongier beneath your steps, layered with centuries of fallen leaves and decomposed dreams. It smells rich, dark, like the inside of an old library. You spot a nurse log, not a fallen tree forgotten by time, but a platform of life. Along its length, ferns unfurl, moss carpets it like velvet. Tiny trees have sprouted along its spine like vertebrae in green. It's no longer dead. It stops becoming. You pause to kneel beside it, running your fingers across the surface. The texture is both soft and firm, like bread crust that's been left out just long enough. You half expect it to pulse beneath your hand, and maybe, in a way, it does. Because every decomposing thing here is feeding something else. Every ending is a beginning. You smile again. The forest is full of quiet ironies. And speaking of irony, you remember something odd. In some groves, trees that have been cut down, their stumps lifeless, leafless, are still alive, not through photosynthesis, but because neighboring trees are feeding them through root connections, keeping them going, a kind of forest hospice care. It's almost funny. Trees with no crowns, no chlorophyll, no reason to go on, still being loved into existence. You let that one sit for a while. It changes you. The air feels thicker now in a comforting way, like the hush inside a cathedral right before a choir begins. You move slowly again, not because you're tired, but because every step feels like it deserves a moment. You touch another trunk, this one rough, shaggy barked. You don't need to see it to know it's a Douglas fir. Your fingers learn its story before your eyes do. You wonder what stories it sits gathered. Storms, birdsong, lovers kissing beneath its shade, children tying ribbons to its branches, lightning strikes, maybe, or silence, so profound it turned into memory. You lean your forehead against the bark and close your eyes. Not to sleep, just to listen more clearly. And this time you do hear something. Not sound, not exactly, but a knowing. As if the tree were saying, "You're part of this too. You've always been part of this." You press your hand to your chest, feeling your own heartbeat. It's not so different, is it? The pulse of the tree, the thrum of your veins, both working silently, both devoted to the sacred task of staying alive. And somewhere in the overlap between chlorophyll and blood, roots and ribs, carbon and breath, you realize this forest isn't just a place you're walking through. It sets a reflection, a mirror. And tonight, It's letting you see yourself more clearly by making you smaller, slower, more open. You open your eyes and walk on, still dreaming, still listening, still learning the silent language of trees. You move deeper into the forest now, where even the moonlight hesitates, filtered through overlapping canopies, softened by the breath of leaves. It's quieter here, but not empty. No, never empty. You can feel the silence humming, as if the air itself is charged with memory. Your steps are lighter, not because the path is easier, but because you are. Something in you has been shedding weight since the moment you entered this green cathedral, like layers of static falling away, distractions dissolving, thought giving way to sensation. And now, something else arrives. A scent, faint but distinct, earthy, sweet, like cedarwood steeped in sunlight. You follow it without meaning to, drawn not by logic but by instinct. The kind of deep, ancient curiosity animals know, the kind that pulls salmon upstream or birds thousands of miles through stars they cannot name. And soon you reach the clearing. It isn't large, just wide enough for a pool of sky to gather above. The moon, almost full now, rests overhead like an ancient coin left in the vault of the night, and at the centre of this soft, fern-framed glade stands a tree unlike the others. Old, broad, twisted like a dream. Someone tried to wake up from too fast. Its trunk spirals, not neatly but with a kind of deliberate chaos, and clinging to its bark are mosses and mushrooms, in patterns that seem suspiciously close to writing. You approach with reverence, not fear, never fear, because in your bones you already know this is one of the mother trees. You've heard of them before, giants hidden in plain sight, older than most empires, larger than most myths. They serve as the hubs of the forest's underground network, sending nutrients, signals, and even wisdom to younger trees nearby. Wisdom that sips not just poetic. In experiments, seedlings grown near older trees with root access to them behave differently, more resilient, more responsive, more likely to thrive. It sets as if the forest teaches, as if experience has a root system. You circle the tree slowly, running your fingers along the furrows of bark deep enough to hide stories. You imagine this being growing here long before the first telephone rang, before planes etched the sky, before your great-great-grandmother told bedtime stories by candlelight. And maybe this mother tree has stories too. One's only the roots, remember. One's passed down not in words but in chemistry. Subtle changes in hormonal signatures that say danger there, water here, rest now, wait, share more. You place your palm flat against its side, and whether it's the wind or wishful thinking, you feel something answer. A kind of low, slow pulse, not a beat like a heart, but a wave like breath, and within it, something else. Warmth, recognition, maybe even welcome. You smile without knowing why. But then, this entire journey has been one long smile held gently between your ribs. You sit down at the base of the tree, letting your back rest against its trunk. The wood is solid but forgiving. Your spine aligns with its spine. Your breath matches the rhythm of its quiet presence. And slowly your awareness shifts, not inward, not outward, but down. You imagine what the tree feels. Below the surface, its roots thread like fingers through the soil, branching and branching again, tapping into the mycelial network like someone logging into an ancient organic internet. And through that network, it knows. Not in the way you know things, but in the way forests do. It knows where the deer have passed, where the bark beetles are swarming, where a sapling is dying, unnoticed in the shade. It knows the shift of season before the frost arrives. It knows, perhaps, even the tone of your thoughts as you lean against it now. And this knowing is not sharp or loud. It is slow, vast, patient beyond understanding. You wonder what it thinks of humans. Not resentfully, but curiously. Like, what are these bright, fast-burning creatures who move in straight lines and speak with such noise? Do trees pity us? Or admire us? Or simply observe the way stars observe, calm, distant, constant? You tilt your head back, eyes half closed, and listen to your breath slow even more. And as you exhale, a question rises, not from your mind, but from somewhere quieter. What would it be like to grow in silence? to live not in minutes, but in centuries, to spend your life reaching upward and downward at the same time, to give and never speak of sacrifice. It sets a humbling thought, and yet comforting, because suddenly you understand that trees are not just symbols of wisdom, they are wisdom, lived, embodied, rooted. They teach not by telling, but by being. And here in the presence of this mother tree, you feel that lesson take root in you too. There is strength in stillness. There is power in patience. There is beauty in being deeply, silently connected. You feel it in the ground beneath you. You feel it in your chest. You feel it in the pause between one breath and the next, where peace lingers like dew. Somewhere far off, an owl hoots. Not startling, but grounding. A punctuation mark in the paragraph of the night. You rise slowly now, not because you're done, but because the forest is always ready for the next step. You place your hand one last time on the tree's bark, whispering something you don't need to put into words. It already understands. You move on, deeper still, not seeking, just walking, just listening. And just as you step past the clearing's edge, something behind you rustles, a squirrel, maybe, or maybe just the tree, stretching in its sleep. Because yes, you're certain now, trees dream too, not like us, but long, slow, leafy dreams that echo across decades. And tonight, perhaps you supped become part of one. The path has grown narrower now, less a trail and more a soft impression, as if the forest is gently suggesting a way forward rather than commanding one. You follow it without question. Your feet make almost no sound, cushioned by the moss-covered ground that feels more like memory than matter. There's a quiet sense of anticipation in the air, not tension, nothing sharp or anxious, but something like being watched in the best possible way, not by predators, but by sentinels, witnesses, fellow inhabitants of this patient world. The trees are taller here, straighter, their trunks are smooth and silver in the moonlight, their leaves whispering a language you're starting to almost understand, and nestled among them, flickering softly like a distant idea, is something new. Lights. Tiny, glowing, dancing just above the roots and ferns, like stars that forgot how to fly. You step closer and realize what you stir seeing. Fireflies. The thousands of them. Maybe more. They drift in slow spirals, hovering in the gentle hollows between tree trunks, blinking in perfect imperfection. No pattern, no command. And yet, there's harmony, a rhythm older than music, pulsing like a hidden breath of the woods. And it's here, in this glowing glade, that you begin to truly grasp the invisible conversations of the trees. Because above ground, this looks like a fantasy. But underground, it's a bustling world of chemical codes and secret signals. You sit down once more, resting your body against a young birch. Its bark peels slightly beneath your fingertips, papery and cool. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the flickers of light behind your lids match the rhythm of the fireflies. And you feel it. That pulse again. The hum. Only now you begin to sense that it's not coming from the tree alone, it's the soil, the entire network. You're resting on a living circuit board of wood and fungus of intention and awareness. Scientists call it the wood wide web. It sits not just poetic, it sits real. Underneath you, mycorrhizal fungi, those delicate thread-like filaments called hyphae, are connecting tree to tree, forming symbiotic relationships, where the trees provide sugars from photosynthesis, and the fungi trade in essential nutrients like phosphorus and nitrogen. But that's just the basic biology. The real magic? The trees use this fungal network to talk. Not in words, but in signals, electrical pulses and chemical alerts. They warn each other about droughts, pests, disease. They share carbon with younger or weaker neighbours. They coordinate. They care. That sip's the shocking part, isn't it? Care. Some researchers call it cooperation. Others hesitate. There's debate, of course. There always is. Some argue it's all just evolutionary efficiency, nothing emotional, just systems maximizing survival. But you can't help wondering, doesn't cooperation require some form of recognition? a sense of the other, a kind of compassion. Maybe not the kind humans practice with all its drama and declarations, but something subtler, something that just says, I know you sit here, and we stir in this together. You lean back, letting that idea settle. Because isn't set that what we all want, in the end, to be recognized, to be part of something, to have our roots touching other roots in the dark? And maybe that's why you've come to this forest, not just to hear a story, but to remember something your body already knows. That connection is not loud. It sits quiet. It doesn't set demand. It offers, like the fireflies around you now, each blink insignificant on its own, but together a symphony of soft light, like the trees passing sugars and signals through unseen strands, like your breath syncing with theirs. There sips a word that rises in you now, kinship. And it doesn't stop with trees, because the fungi that form these underground networks, they're not just forest caretakers, they're among the oldest living organisms on Earth. Some colonies are estimated to be thousands of years old, covering miles of terrain, silent architects of ecosystems. One in Oregon, the Armillaria Astoria, spans nearly 4 square miles. It's Suts, called the humongous fungus. Not the most elegant name, but endearing. You chuckle softly. Because even here, surrounded by ancient intelligence and glowing insects, the world still has a sense of humour. And why shouldn't it? Laughter is part of the language too. Maybe trees don't laugh the way you do, but you suspect they might feel something similar when the breeze rustles their leaves just right, or when a deer rubs its antlers against their bark in springtime. Maybe that sips joy. You open your eyes again, and the fireflies are closer now. Not threatening, just curious. You lift your hand, and one lands briefly on your knuckle. It glows once soft and gold, and then lifts off, leaving behind a sense of contact that feels strangely meaningful. You whisper, thank you, and it doesn't matter if it understands. The forest hears you. You stay there for a while longer, wrapped in the hum of unseen conversation. And when you rise again, you feel, not because you've let go of anything, but because something else has picked it up and carried it with you. A little farther, a little deeper, and as you walk on, you notice something new. A rhythm in your steps that matches the blinking lights. A softness in your spine that echoes the curve of tree trunks. A calm certainty in your chest that whispers, you are not alone. And the deeper you go, the louder that silence becomes. But not empty silence. Not absence. Presence. The kind that speaks volumes without saying a word. The kind that trees have known all along. The path curls now like a question mark drawn into the earth. You step gently, careful not to disturb the softened moss or the quiet thoughts of the forest. The deeper you walk, the more the trees begin to change, not just in shape or size, but in presence. They feel older here, wiser, quieter in a different way, as though they're not merely watching, but remembering. The trunks are thicker, some are hollowed with time, others gnarled like knuckles folded in silent meditation. Their bark is cracked with stories, their roots swollen with the weight of ages. You sense it in the air, a kind of reverence, like stepping into a cathedral with no walls, no roof, and yet a sanctity that humbles you to your core. You've entered the ancient grove, and here the trees don't just communicate, they hold history. Through scent, through signals, through the rhythm of leaves in wind and the drift of pollen, trees pass down memory, not in the way humans do with dates and diaries, but biologically, behaviorally, in structure and chemistry. Studies have shown that trees subjected to trauma, like insect attacks or drought, change their growth patterns, not just for themselves, but for future generations. Saplings born from those trees will sometimes sprout with built-in resilience, even before encountering stress. It's as if the parent whispered something into the seed before letting go. A warning, a memory, a gift. And you wonder, what does your body remember that your mind has forgotten? Isn't your own DNA layered with messages, instructions written in protein and possibility, echoes of ancestors of every soft decision, every adaptation that allowed you to be here now, walking beneath these branches? There's a kind of dizzying beauty in that, You place your palm against a tree older than any building you've ever seen. The bark is rough, lined with lichen, cool beneath your fingertips. You breathe. It doesn't answer in words, but you feel something shift. And as if in response, the grove deepens its breath with you. A wind rises, not fierce, but full. It moves through the canopy like a tide, rustling the leaves in a slow ripple, carrying with it a strange scent. Not flowers, not rot. Something spiced, like the inside of a cedar trunk or the dry breath of pine. A reminder that smell, too, is a form of language in this place. Trees release chemical signals called volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, when under threat. If an acacia is being eaten by a giraffe, it will emit warning gases into the air, and nearby trees will respond, pulling toxins into their leaves to become less appetizing. That's not just reaction. It's SEP's preemptive, anticipatory, a warning cry on the wind. But not all messages are cries. Some are lullabies. Trees have seasonal dialect after all. Spring's chemistry is different from autumn's. In bloom they speak of hope and hunger. In fall they speak of wisdom and letting go. Even the scent of crushed leaves underfoot is a kind of farewell, a final transmission. You breathe it in now, and you feel not sad, just aware. That time is moving here, but slowly, that nothing is wasted. Even death in the forest is transformation. When a tree falls, it doesn't vanish. It becomes a nurse log, feeding fungi and ferns, housing salamanders and beetles. Its decay is symphony and service. It becomes soil, and from that soil, something else rises. In this way, the forest is not a place of endings. It sits a library of change, a whisper that says, you don't have to stay the same to remain whole. You pause beside one fallen giant. Moss has overtaken its spine. Tiny saplings grow straight from its flanks, like children learning from their mother's rest. How many decades has it laid here? You gently step over its softened trunk and continue on, noticing that even your thoughts have slowed, not dulled but softened, like velvet over stone. You prefer walking slower too, because when you match the pace of trees, the world expands. You begin to notice the tiny negotiations happening around you. Ants carrying fungal spores along bark veins, moths trembling on bark with folded wings, beetles boring secret tunnels beneath the surface. Each life microscopic, and yet part of this larger conversation, one the trees have been participating in for millennia. And then comes a quirky, almost funny thought. If the trees are speaking, what do they think of us? Loud, fast, fire-prone humans. Do they consider us toddlers with torches? Or perhaps, do they feel for us? After all, we're made of the same molecules. We share carbon, nitrogen, water, light. There's a scientific term, allelopathy, when a plant releases chemicals that influence the growth or behavior of nearby plants. Some trees use it competitively, stunting rival saplings. Others, like the ponderosa pine, seem to encourage the growth of their own kind, creating groves of familial strength. Is that favoritism? Friendship? Again, the debate continues. Some ecologists scoff at anthropomorphizing plant behavior. They warn against calling it love or wisdom. They insist on objectivity. But perhaps objectivity is just the beginning. Because to sit in a grove of 800-year-old trees and call them non-sentient feels like looking at the ocean and calling it wet. Technically true, but spiritually lacking. So you stand for a while, hand resting against the gnarled wood of an elder trunk. You feel your breath fall into sync with its silence. You feel the pull of time, slow and circular. And you think, maybe the trees don't need to understand us. Maybe they only need us to listen. Like we stood doing now. Still, soft, awake. The breeze stirs again, brushing a single leaf from above. It twirls, dances, lands near your foot. You pick it up, hold it to the light. Its veins glow faintly, green gold and glowing, like messages, like maps, like memories waiting to be read. And as you step forward again, you carry it with you. Not because you must, but because it reminds you of the thing you've always known. That silence is never empty. Not here, not among the trees, The trail narrows now, hemmed in by tangled undergrowth and shadow-heavy limbs. You move with care, ducking beneath moss-laced branches and weaving between sentinel trunks that seem to lean in, not menacing but curious. The grove behind you feels like a memory, and ahead, something shifts. Not in sound or sight, but in feeling. Have you ever stood at the edge of something truly alive? You feel it now, a pulse beneath your feet, a sensation like breath rising from the soil, and just ahead, bathed in dappled twilight, you see it. A vast tree, wider than any you've yet seen, its bark silvered with age, its limbs arching into a high cathedral of green. Around its base, strange fungi grow like miniature parasols, bioluminescent and pulsing faintly blue. The light doesn't pierce the darkness. It glows into it, diffusing, softening. This, you know without knowing, is the heartwood. Not the scientific center of the forest. The spiritual one. You approach slowly, as if in ceremony. And this time, the silence feels thick with intention. Because this tree, this ancient sentient monument, may be connected to all the others, you've reached the central node in what scientists call the Wood Wide Web, a real, measurable network where trees and plants communicate through underground fungal threads called mycorrhizae. It's SADS, not metaphor. It's SEPS math, biology, chemistry. But it feels like something more. This network allows trees to share nutrients, warn of danger, and even selectively support younger kin. A mother tree, for instance, can funnel carbon to her saplings, especially those in distress. Pause for a second. Let that sink in. A tree nourishing its children through a silent underground bond. You place your hand on the great trunk, and in your mind's eye you begin to see it, not with sight but with imagination. A glowing map beneath the soil. Threads of light connecting root to root, tree to tree, like neurons in a forest brain. Some have even compared it to the internet, but older, more generous. There are no trolls here, no clickbait, only sharing, only sustaining. And once again, the questions start to bubble in your mind. If a tree can give to another, what stops it from withdrawing, from punishing, from isolating? Are there forest politics? Rivalries? Do trees ever lie? It sounds silly, but some researchers have noted defensive mimicry in forest ecosystems. Certain plants imitate the chemical signals of their neighbors to avoid detection or predation. Others send out false signals to attract help. It's complicated, messy, just like every living system. And yet, there's balance here, a dynamic equilibrium. What scientists call symbiosis, the living together of different species in close, often beneficial relationships. Trees and fungi, insects and leaves, bacteria and bark. And you too, standing in this web, are not separate. Your skin has inhaled spores. Your breath has exchanged with 1,000 leaves. Your very presence shifts the electric field between root hairs underfoot. You are known, not by name, but by being. There's an obscure tidbit you might like. Certain mycorrhizal fungi emit sounds, ultrasonic clicks, as they grow. No one knows why. Some believe it's simply structural, like the creaking of wood. Others wonder if it's a form of rudimentary signaling. Still others ask the dreamy question, what if the forest is humming to itself? You can almost hear it, that faint thrum beneath silence. Not melody, but tone. A constant note held across time, like a tuning fork struck at the beginning of the world, still vibrating softly in roots and spores. And maybe, just maybe, when you feel inexplicably calm among trees, it's because some forgotten part of you remembers that frequency. You sink to the forest floor now, cross-legged beside a root thick as a whale's rib. You breathe in, and the air is sweet, damp, textured with loam and thyme. And you allow your thoughts to wander. Because in this place, even your wandering becomes part of the ecosystem. Do trees dream? Do they regret? Do they celebrate the birth of spring or mourn the fall of a companion? You think of how trees have witnessed human history. Some living pines in California are over 5,000 years old, older than written language, older than the pyramids. What have they seen? What haven't they seen? They've survived fire, drought, glaciation, and us, axes, saws, chains, concrete. Still they grow, still they give, and even in death they become habitat. Stillness has value here. Decay has dignity. And perhaps, most humbling of all, trees don't need us, but they allow us. They offer oxygen, shade, shelter, food, without thanks, without judgment. Trees have no hands, and yet they give the world away. And now, sitting here at the base of this ancient network, you begin to feel time shifting again. Not forward, not back, but wide. You're not walking a straight path through a forest anymore. You stir inside a wheel, everything circling, everything connected, and somewhere beneath you that fungal web pulses, carrying news of your footstep, your stillness, your heartbeat. You rest your palm against the earth and imagine it. Somewhere, a root shifts. Somewhere, a signal passes. Not dramatic, not cinematic, but real. And you realize, in this forest, you are part of the conversation now. No longer visitor, no longer observer, but participant. A small node in a vast ancient web. You don't need to say anything. Just listen. The forest will remember. You remain still beside the ancient root, lulled into a quiet that isn't silence but presence. Even your breath seems slower here, almost in sync with something older and deeper than lungs, like you're borrowing the rhythm of the forest itself. You rise gently, brushing moss from your fingertips, and begin to walk again. The canopy thins above, and a sliver of twilight sneaks through the branches. You're not sure how long you've been wandering. Time has lost its edge, softened by leaves and lichen, but you notice now that the forest has subtly changed. The trees grow farther apart here. Tall, thin trunks rise like pillars in a green cathedral, and their shadows stretch long across a clearing ahead. You step into it slowly, and just like that, you're inside a council. Yes, that sip's the word that comes to you. The Circle of Ancients. Towering elders, cedars, redwoods, beeches stand around the perimeter like robed sages. Some lean, some twist, some wear scars from lightning or age, but all are silent, watching, witnessing. You feel small again, but not in a fearful way, more like a child at the knees of giants. And this is when you begin to sense it, not with ears but with the fine hairs along your arms. Communication, not in words, not in symbols, but in an exchange older than language, a slow release of pheromones, a shifting of chemical signatures, a gentle tremor in the air as unseen fungal threads tighten beneath your feet. You are not eavesdropping. You sit being invited. Because now you are witnessing something sacred, interspecies dialogue. A beech tree, researchers found, will recognize its neighbors, sending more resources to its own kin than to strangers. In times of drought, some species even reduce their own photosynthesis to share water with the thirsty. Does that sound like instinct? Or something more deliberate? You wonder, because all around you now, the trees appear to be exchanging signals, not in haste, not for drama, but for balance. A recalibration, a sharing, and that's when a breeze picks up, warm and pine-sweet, and you remember something delightful. A quirky fact whispered by an old botanist on a rainy podcast episode. Trees can scream. Yes, really. In drought conditions, when the water columns inside their xylem break from dehydration, trees emit ultrasonic clicks, not loud enough for human ears, but real, detectable, measurable. And the forest hears them. Other trees respond by closing their stomata or altering their root activity. It's not shrieking in panic, it's a whispered warning. You look up at the tallest tree in the circle, a redwood so immense it looks like it should have its own orbit, and you wonder, what did it scream during the last fire season? Did others hear it? Did they tighten their bark? Did the underground network blaze with urgency? No one knows for sure. The science is still catching up to the questions. But the more we study, the more we find that trees are social beings, not in our human way, not with parties or promises, but with responses, with attunement. They notice each other. They remember damage. They nurture survival. And here in this council, you feel that memory layered like rings inside every trunk. Maybe you've heard that old poem about trees growing rings in solitude, but science reveals something more nuanced. Rings vary not just with time, but with community. Dense forests yield thinner rings, open ones grow fatter. Competition, cooperation, scarcity, abundance, it's all etched into the grain. The tree remembers, and so do its children. Yes, some trees can even pass along chemical signatures, warnings from past trauma, to the next generation through seeds or saplings. Is that inheritance? Or teaching? You smile at the thought, because somewhere in this council, a sapling has already learned the scent of danger from a parent's stress. And you start to feel the echoes of those lessons too. The clearing grows dimmer now, not from fading light, but from clouds, soft and grey, drifting in above the treetops. Thunder murmurs far off, low and sleepy, like a giant rolling over in his bed of moss. Rain is coming. The trees know. You can feel it in the shift of the wind, in the creak of the limbs above you. Not fear, not resistance, just readiness. Because trees don't run. They don't stop, fight. They adapt. They embrace. You sit at the base of one of the elders, letting your back press into the cool bark. The texture is rough but kind, and the vibrations in the trunk feel almost like a heartbeat, deep and slow. You let your eyelids droop. Let your breath match that ancient pulse. And you wonder, again, if the forest has memory, does it also have forgiveness? For the clear cuts, for the concrete, for the noise and exhaust and plastic. You don't know, but still the trees offer shade. Still they grow. And maybe that sits their answer. Not forgetfulness, not absolution, just persistence. You hear the first drop of rain, a soft tap on a leaf, and then another. A delicate percussion begins, leaves whispering, bark sighing, the canopy murmuring in applause. And all at once, the forest becomes a concert hall, every branch tuned, every root listening, and in the heart of it, you, just a listener, just another note in this vast green chorus. The rain continues, but you sit, not wet. You're beneath a bough, so wide, it shelters like a roof. And there you remain, watching the water bead and roll and fall in little rivulets of silver light. You close your eyes and imagine what it might be like to sleep for 100 years. To feel only rain and root. To communicate not with noise but with chemistry and patience. And you think maybe that's what peace feels like. Not quiet, but connection. Not stillness, but presence. The kind that doesn't demand anything of you. Only that you stay for a little while longer. So you do. The rain is soft at first, a lullaby in droplets. You sit perfectly still beneath your leafy cathedral, lulled into a kind of half-sleep. Not quite dreaming, but no longer fully awake either. Your breath is slow. Your mind floats gently on the rhythm of rain and roots, like a leaf adrift in a forest stream. But then, something shifts. A faint shimmer, just there, on the edge of vision. You open your eyes. It sips not lightning, though the sky is dim. It sumps not sun, though warmth brushes your cheek. It's something else entirely. Something that almost feels intentional. You rise and follow it. The shimmer seems to move, not fast, not direct, but coaxing. You feel no urgency, no fear, just curiosity, and that strange, gentle pull again, as if your feet know where to go even before your thoughts do. And so you wander deeper into the forest. The trees close in again, forming a dense wall of living green. Ferns brush your legs. Bark whispers as you pass. Occasionally, you glimpse small creatures darting away, squirrels with luminous eyes, owls that blink like lanterns. They aren't startled, just observant. You stir being watched, but not in a way that unsettles. No, this feels more like a welcome. And then you see it. A wide, moss-draped tree, unlike any you've seen so far. Its trunk is hollow, a gentle curve forming an arched entrance barely tall enough for you to step through. The shimmer dances just inside. You hesitate, but only for a breath. Then you step through. And suddenly, You're underground, not in darkness, but in an amber twilight lit by bioluminescent roots. They stretch in every direction, woven like lace, pulsing faintly, threading through the soil with impossible grace. Some are thick as arms, others as fine as hair, and all of them are alive. This is the Wood Wide Web. You've heard the phrase before, maybe on a podcast or in a sleepy documentary narrated by someone with a voice like velvet. But nothing prepared you for this. This isn't metaphor. It sets reality. Fungi, bacteria, and tree roots fused in ancient collaboration, trading carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, sending distress signals, sharing nutrients, coordinating survival. It's the internet, but older, quieter, and far more elegant. And you somehow can feel it, like a low hum beneath your ribs, like a frequency too deep to hear, but too real to ignore. You place your hand on a glowing root, half expecting to be jolted, but the only sensation is warmth and something else. Emotion? Is that possible? Can roots feel? Scientists might say no, at least not the way we do, but there are researchers who argue trees can learn, that roots sniff out nutrients and adjust their growth with purpose, that plants remember trauma, avoid dangers, prefer companions. The debates rage on in labs and journals, but here, in this earthen cathedral, you don't need data. You can feel it. This network is intelligent, not conscious, perhaps, not in the self-aware sense we treasure, but responsive, dynamic, alive. You crouch and trace your fingers through a tangle of tiny filaments, mycorrhizal threads. They stretch from tree to tree, species to species, forming an underground communication system that defies borders. A Douglas fir will feed a birch. An alder will whisper to a pine. Even dying trees, the so-called mother trees, will funnel their last resources to their children through this network, ensuring the forest continues after they fall. That alone tugs at your heart. You whisper, almost aloud, "Thank you." And for a moment, the glow pulses. You're not sure if it's coincidence or something more, but your chest softens. Your mind grows quiet, and the silence begins to speak. You sit in the soil, back against the curve of the old hollow trunk, and let your thoughts drift past what-ifs and deadlines, past old fears and modern noise. And you remember another quirky truth: fungi, the silent architects of this world, are more closely related to animals than to plants. Isn't that strange? That the mushrooms we saute, the mold on bread, the mycelium crisscrossing the forest floor, share more in common with you than with the trees they nourish. Maybe it sits not so strange. Maybe that's the point. We're not separate from this web. We are part of it. Our lungs evolved to breathe what trees exhale. Our bodies carry the chemical echoes of forests. Even the serotonin in our brains, that elusive, happiness-making molecule, can be shaped by the microbes we inherit from soil. You've heard the phrase earthing or forest bathing, trendy names for something ancient. But they are not just spiritual metaphors. Science has shown that being in forests lowers cortisol, slows heart rates, boosts immunity. The forest isn't just a place. It's a medicine. And maybe, just maybe, it sips a memory. One your bones remember, even if your mind forgets. The rain above has faded now, a soft hush replacing the patter. You hear roots stretching in the soil, tiny movements amplified by the chamber you sit in. And then, a flicker, a vision, a dream? You're not sure, but suddenly the root glow pulses brighter, and your mind is filled with images. An old redwood falling, but its roots still feeding others. A scorched forest regrowing, slow, steady, defiant. A fungal thread stretching between continents. And a child, barefoot, laughing, running through a sunlit grove, leaves in her hair, a future in her lungs. Maybe that child is you, or someone you sib yet to meet. Maybe you're just the briefest node in a web that spans centuries. And maybe that sips enough, because nothing here demands permanence, only presence. The glow begins to dim again, not fading, just resting, as if the network has said what it needed to say. You rise slowly, muscles tingling, and walk back through the hollow tree. The sky has cleared. Stars peek through the high canopy, winking like ancient seeds tossed across black velvet. You breathe in and feel a strange full warmth inside your chest. Not adrenaline, not joy, something quieter. The word comes to you like a gift, belonging. The stars are blinking through the canopy now, quiet companions in the vast sky above. You find yourself walking again, slow, unhurried steps over pine needles and soft moss, guided not by logic or map but by some inner pulse you trust without question. It sits late, but you stopped thinking in hours. Time here isn't set measured by clocks. It breathes in photosynthesis, in the heartbeat of trees, in the centuries folded gently into every ring of ancient bark. The forest whispers again, just behind your thoughts. You pause near a clearing where moonlight filters through, illuminating a circle of stumps, not harshly severed but old, weathered, and softened by years. They sit like elders quietly remembering. And here comes a curious fact, sliding into your thoughts like a forgotten bookmark. Scientists once discovered that even stumps long after being cut can remain alive. Not alive in the way you and I define it, but alive through connection. Fed by neighboring trees through shared root systems, kept breathing by community. Isn't it that something? Even in death, a tree may still be held in the arms of the forest, still valued, still nurtured, like an old storyteller too precious to let go. You walk among these stumps, careful not to disturb the ferns growing between them. The moonlight touches their tops like blessings. You wonder what stories they once told each other in the language of leaves and sap. And then, quiet laughter in your throat. Another strange tidbit surfaces. Some trees produce chemicals that smell like freshly cut grass, but not as a perfume. It's a distress signal. A way to cry out, I've been harmed. And nearby trees, they listen. They respond. They strengthen their own defenses. It's a whisper chain across species, a biological empathy far older than language. Can you imagine? If humans could taste each other's stress in the air, smell heartbreak, sense betrayal in the wind, would we be gentler, more honest, or would we be overwhelmed? You let that thought pass like a cloud drifting over a pond and keep walking. Ahead, the trees shift again, taller, narrower, a grove of aspens. And with that change in species comes a new rhythm, more vertical, more curious. Their trunks shimmer pale under moonlight, like silver ghosts standing guard. But here sips the wonder. It sips not a grove. Not really. You stir looking at a single organism. One massive root system. One identity. Thousands of trunks. They call it Pando. And it might be one of the oldest living things on Earth. Perhaps 80,000 years old. Think of that. Before the pyramids. Before the wheel. Before language itself found form. This tree, this great trembling collective was already stretching through the soil. Not shouting, not conquering, just being. Surviving wildfires, droughts, insects and ice ages by sharing resources underground. Not outcompeting, not dominating, just supporting. And here it is again, that theme the forest keeps repeating like a mantra. Connection, interdependence, survival through shared strength. You place your palm against one pale trunk. It's cool and smooth, like old marble. The bark trembles gently in the night breeze, and the sound it makes, soft rustling, echoes through thousands of siblings at once. You wonder if this is what thought sounds like for a tree. Not words, but movement. You close your eyes and feel it again. That frequency, that invitation. To belong not as a separate self, but as a single note in a living chord. You sink to the ground beneath the aspens. The earth is softer here, more giving. Their roots thread lightly beneath you, like being held in a hammock of memory. Your thoughts begin to drift, not away from yourself, but deeper into yourself. You recall being a child, tracing the lines in bark and pretending they were secret maps. You remember the hush of trees before a storm, the way the air smells like wet stone and cut leaves. You remember a time when silence didn't frighten you. Before the screens. Before the noise. Before the algorithm told you what to think. Here in this living cathedral, none of that matters. Likes, shares, notifications. They don't exist here. Only the rustle of aspen leaves, whispering like a lullaby above your head. There's a soft crackling, and a tiny creature scampers by, a vole perhaps, or some woodland cousin. It stops for a moment to study you with bead-black eyes, then vanishes beneath a root, as if it's part of the forest's circulatory system. You smile. It's easy to believe you stir dreaming now. But not in the sense of being disconnected from reality. Quite the opposite. This feels more real, like waking into a dream that was always waiting beneath your feet. And now, a strange question forms, lazy and curious. If a forest dreams, what does it dream about? The slow growth of its youngest shoot, the fall of its eldest branch. Does it mourn? Does it rejoice? Or does it simply witness? A great observer recording the passage of seasons, the flutter of wings, the rise and fall of empires beyond its borders. You lie back and gaze at the sky. The stars are clearer now, winking like tiny seeds. A shooting star arcs past. You don't make a wish. Not because you don't believe in them, but because in this moment you don't need one. Everything you've ever hoped for feels somehow present, not fulfilled, not final, but seen. The aspens tremble again, and their sound feels like breath, like the forest exhaling in unison with you. You are no longer walking through the forest. You are part of it. A borrowed cell in a living organism. A soft echo in a vast, gentle symphony. The kind of music that doesn't need to be understood, only heard. And so, you listen. There's something soft beneath your fingertips. Earth and root and humus warmed by age and shadow. You run your hand along the mossy ground, your skin brushing the tender green velvet that carpets the forest floor, each tiny frond lifting as if greeting your touch. It doesn't speak in any language you know, and yet it feels polite, like the earth nodding back. You've been walking for so long that you've stopped wondering where this path leads, but it's not disorienting. If anything, it feels deeply right, like following a forgotten trail in a dream you used to have as a child, a trail you were always meant to return to. Up ahead, the trees grow stranger, older still, if such a thing is possible, their trunks widen to cathedral proportions. Bark like cracked stone, branches that spiral skyward like thoughts made of wood. You're not sure what species these are. Oak, maybe, or something older, something that didn't make it into the field guides. And nestled among their roots, fungi. Clusters, ribbons, halos of mushrooms in impossible shapes, coral-like fronds, ghostly white tendrils, bright orange domes like miniature suns. You crouch down, entranced, and this is where the next layer of the forest begins to reveal itself to you. Not the trees, but their silent partners below. The Mycorrhizal networks. Filaments finer than human hair, branching out for miles, connecting root to root. Fungi and trees in symbiotic dance, an underground internet of nutrients and messages, the so-called Wood Wide Web. Isn't it that a wonderful name? You imagine data packets in the form of sugars and minerals, alerts about droughts, warnings about disease, little care packages passed between companions. And here's your science morsel of the moment. Researchers have shown that trees not only share carbon with younger saplings through these fungal networks, but can even prioritize which children need more help. It's not just passive diffusion. It sets choice, support, a kind of generosity. You exhale slowly, that strange, unexpected ache you sometimes feel late at night. The one you can't quite name feels softer now, like it's being gently held by something older than pain. As you sit by a thick, knotted root, you imagine those fungal threads passing beneath you like invisible train lines, whole bustling communities of connection happening right under your body. You're resting atop a civilization built on quiet, mutual aid. And here comes one of those lovely, quirky facts to make you smile. The largest known fungal organism in the world lives in Oregon. It's estimated to be thousands of years old and spans over 2,000 acres. One fungus, one being larger than any animal, including whales. But you never seen it. No one has, not entirely. It sits too vast, too quiet. Just like the soul, you think. Vast, quiet, mostly hidden, and yet touching everything you are. You look up, and the forest has shifted again. The trees are closer together here, like a whispering crowd, their branches stretched toward one another as if trying to hold hands. And for a brief moment, it feels like the whole forest is waiting for something. You don't know what, maybe just this moment. You, breathing, listening. You remember how in cities people build networks too, wires, roads, fiber optics, satellites. But the forest doesn't need concrete or signal towers. Its messages travel in water and carbon, in electric pulses through root and fungus. And unlike us, it doesn't seem to overbuild. No redundancy for redundancy. Sec. No shouting. Just enough. Only what sips needed. What would that feel like, to live like that? To be enough by simply existing, without proving, without producing, without performing. You lean back, and your head rests against a trunk warm from stored sunlight. You wonder, do the trees feel time the way we do? Are they aware of their age? Do they feel pride in their centuries? Do they mourn their fallen? Perhaps they don't feel emotion in the human sense. But isn't there emotion in the act of reaching out? In feeding a neighbour? In standing still for 200 years through storms and drought, and still stretching your arms toward the sun? Maybe that's a kind of hope. Maybe trees are nature sept's oldest optimists. You let that thought wrap around you like a blanket. The forest feels thicker now, like syrup or fog or memory. Your feet barely make a sound. Your breath barely stirs the air. A sound echoes in the distance, something like a chime or maybe a bird with a flute for a voice. You follow it without question. You no longer walk through the forest like a visitor. You move like a message passed between roots. There's a softness in your joints now, a yielding. You're beginning to forget the sharpness of concrete, the flicker of screens, the urgency of notifications. You are remembering something else. How it feels to belong, to be still, to listen so deeply that you can hear things that don't speak. The forest seems to breathe around you. It's silence, not empty but full. And in that silence, you finally hear your own thoughts. And they aren't as noisy as you feared. Some of them are even kind. You let out a soft laugh, and it echoes off a distant trunk. The trees don't laugh back, but you sense they sip amused anyway. After all, they've seen everything. The rise of empires, the fall of cities, the brief flicker of humans claiming permanence. And still, they grow. Still, they reach for the light. Still, they whisper underground. Maybe you till remember this when you wake. Or maybe it will become part of the root system of your own memory, nourishing you from below in ways you can't see. And maybe, just maybe, the next time you walk past a tree, you'll slow down. You shall place your hand on its bark, and it will remember you. Somewhere behind you, the trail has vanished. But you don't turn around to check. You know the forest well enough now to understand. It's not a place of straight lines or return journeys. You're not here to get somewhere. You're here to be. You step over a fallen log, its bark rotted to lace, revealing soft amber threads of life still crawling through its body. Death is never a full stop in this place, more like a quiet comma in a sentence that keeps on growing. You pause to trace a finger across the log's ridges, admiring how even in decay, it's part of the grand conversation. All around you, the trees are murmuring in their slow-motion way, and you find yourself leaning in as though you could catch the drift of a thought carried on a breeze. You wonder, do trees remember? Some scientists think they might. Not like humans do. No albums of photographs. No names scratched into bark with clumsy adolescent hearts. But memory of a different kind. Cellular. Collective. Studies have shown that when a tree survives drought, it somehow remembers that stress. Later it reacts faster, more efficiently. When dry days return, the past reshapes the future, rooted deep in the grain of its rings. And here comes your quirky tidbit for the night. Some researchers are exploring the idea that trees may even warn their offspring about danger, encoding responses into seeds like tiny survival manuals wrapped in green hope. You tilt your head. If trees pass on memory like that, what have your memories passed into the air, into the people around you? What quiet signals have you left in your wake? The thought lingers like the scent of pine on mist. Deeper in the woods, you come to a clearing. It's strange not because it's empty, but because it feels intentionally cleared, like the trees agreed to leave this space open. In the center stands a tree unlike any you've seen before. It doesn't rise above the canopy, doesn't glow or shimmer or sprout golden leaves, but there's something steady about it. Grounded, wise. Its trunk twists upward in elegant spirals, its roots fan out like a skirt woven of time. You sit across from it in the grass, as if about to start a conversation. You don't speak aloud. You don't seek need to. There's a stillness between you that feels like an answer. And in that silence, you begin to notice the rhythm of the forest again. Not just the rustling, but the pauses, the soft pulsing of sap, the shifting of light through canopy, the slow bend of a branch as it adjusts its posture against the wind. Everything here moves, just slower than you're used to. And somehow that makes it feel more permanent. The tree before you offers no words, but you feel it listening. To you, to the soil, to the seasons and the sky. Its life has unfolded in layers of rings, each one holding stories. A fire that came through 80 years ago, the shadow of a nearby tree that once leaned too close, a sudden abundance of rain in its 37th year, the years where the birds nested in high branches, the one time lightning kissed its crown and left a scar that healed inward. You close your eyes and press your palm to its bark. For a moment, you imagine those rings not as lines of age, but as songs, each year a different tone. The longer the life, the richer the chord. You wonder what your own song might sound like. Would it tremble in high notes, or hum with warm bass? Would there be quiet years, dissonant ones, crescendos of joy? You smile. Another question for the forest to hold. The sun begins to slip beneath the edge of the trees, painting the world in twilight. You sit with the silence, and suddenly it isn't sept empty. It's seps filled with life, with breath, with meaning. The trees are not lonely. They are never alone. Even the dead ones feed the living. Even the fallen return as food, as home, as memory. You hear the wind rustling above, perhaps passing gossip from grove to grove, or maybe just stirring the branches to remind them they are part of something bigger. You lie back in the grass and watch as the stars begin to wink awake. They flicker gently between the leaves like ancient fireflies. You stretch your limbs across the earth, and the ground beneath you feels softer than any bed. You could fall asleep here. And maybe in some small way you already have. A thought rises slowly in your mind. If the trees remember drought and warn of beetles and share sugar with their kin, what do they dream of? You picture a forest dreamscape, roots twisting into constellations, sap flowing like rivers through memory, leaves fluttering in a wind made of song. You never know for sure, but still you ask the question, and the tree beside you seems to smile. Or maybe that sep's just the moonlight. You rest your head against the moss and close your eyes, just for a moment. And the last thing you hear before sleep begins to take you is the sound of the forest breathing. It sounds a little like you. Time has softened. You can't remember exactly when the forest first welcomed you in, but by now its rhythm beats in sync with your own. Breath by breath, you are more tree than traveller, more listening than thinking, more stillness than step. Tonight the woods are cloaked in mist, not the chilling kind, but the soft veil that makes every shape a suggestion. Trees appear like ghosts, then vanish behind their own quiet breath. The air is thick with the smell of damp bark, cool earth, and something faintly sweet, sap perhaps, or the memory of blooming flowers from weeks ago. You press forward, slower now, not out of fatigue but reverence. You've learned that silence isn't an absence, it's an invitation. Above you, a branch creaks softly, and somewhere far off, an owl questions the night. You wonder if the trees hear that call, and what they make of it. Maybe they recognize its voice. Maybe they answer, not in sound, but in scent or subtle tilt. Some researchers believe trees can detect vibrations through their roots, even minute sounds like a caterpillar chewing a leaf. They respond with chemical defenses or send alerts to neighboring trees through underground fungal networks. It's less like talking and more like tuning, a symphony of intent without sound. You imagine each tree as an instrument tuned not by hand but by wind, time and need. The forest is less of a choir and more of a living, breathing chord, each tree vibrating just enough to make the others feel something. As the fog thickens, you stumble gently into another world. A grove of birch trees, slender, silver, glowing faintly even in the dimness. They stand like quiet sentinels, each one perfectly spaced from the next, as if arranged by an invisible choreographer who understands balance in ways no human ever could. You remember reading once that birches, unlike many trees, peel their bark naturally in strips, not because of disease or decay, but as part of their growth. They shed what no longer serves them. Beautifully, softly. You reach out to touch one, its surface papery like ancient scrolls curled in sleep. You wonder what stories this bark would whisper if it could. And then a thought roots itself in your mind. If trees shed their past so gracefully, why is it so hard for you? You sit beneath the birch watching the fog curl through its branches like slow dancing smoke. You think about all the memories you've held too long, the ones that no longer protect but only weigh you down. Maybe it's time to let them peel away too. Inhale, exhale. You imagine each breath lifting away a strip of what no longer fits. The trees don't seem to judge you for carrying too much. They never rush, never scold, never compare. They simply stand. And in doing so, they teach you how to stay rooted and reach upward at the same time. As you lean back against the birch's trunk, a glimmer catches your eye, a cluster of small mushrooms glowing faintly near the base, bioluminescent, pulsing like tiny forest lanterns. You chuckle gently. It's absurdly magical, like someone sprinkled the scene with fairy dust just to keep the dream interesting. And here comes your quirky tidbit for the evening. Did you know there's a species of fungus called Armillaria ostoyae, often nicknamed the humongous fungus? It's technically the largest living organism on Earth. One of its underground networks spans nearly 4 square miles beneath Oregon. It's a single organism connected by a massive mycelial web, silently thriving in the soil. You blink at the mushrooms again. Are they whispering to the tree above them, passing messages through that same ancient fungal internet? Some scientists believe trees use these fungal threads, mycorrhizal networks, not only to share nutrients, but to exchange chemical signals, to nurture their young, even to punish selfish behavior. The forest enforces cooperation, not through laws, but through quiet consequence. A slow democracy of roots. You lie down among the moss, still warm from the day's heat, and imagine what it would be like to be part of such a network, to be truly known, not for what you say, but for what you give, for how you connect. Would you be a tree who shares, or one who hoards? Would you lean toward others, or stand apart? The birches above you sway in agreement, or maybe just in the breeze. You trace shapes in the mist with your breath, and the forest keeps watching you, like a kind parent who never needs to speak to be understood. A woodpecker drums in the distance, a heartbeat echoing through bark. You close your eyes. Not asleep, not quite, but drifting into the soft in-between where memory, dream and science all blend together. The birch behind you feels warm now, or maybe you're just finally still enough to notice. You rest your hand on its roots, and though it doesn't speak, it says something anyway. Maybe it sits just this: you, sir, not alone here. And that, somehow, is enough. A delicate hush greets you as you stir, not quite waking, just shifting in the mossy cradle of the forest's arms. A nearby leaf unfurls with the gentlest of sighs, and somewhere above a finch turns in its sleep. Even the trees, towering and timeless, seem quieter now, as though they've entered their own dreaming. This moment, just before the forest breathes in again, feels like the pause between thoughts, a sacred stillness. You ease upright, eyes adjusting to the sliver of moonlight filtering through the canopy. The fog has lifted, replaced by a clarity so fine you can make out individual dewdrops beading on ferns. The world is glassy and still, as if freshly blown from some celestial furnace and left to cool. You begin walking again, and this time you don't feel like an outsider. You stir, not wandering through the forest. You stare within it. Its memory wraps around you like a second skin. Your path leads into a stand of towering redwoods, older than the language you're thinking in, older than your country, older than recorded history. These giants have seen centuries fold in on themselves. Storms come and go, empires rise, crumble, and vanish, but these silent elders remain. It's said some redwoods can live for over 2,000 years. You try to imagine what it would feel like to have your feet rooted in the same place for 2 millennia, to listen to the same birds returning each season, to witness wolves return and vanish, to feel the air change as the world burns or heals above you. And yet, still you grow. Still you reach. Still you give. Redwoods share water through their roots with neighbouring trees, especially those in need. Their root systems are surprisingly shallow, yet they intertwine so densely that even a young tree can find support. It's SUP's not survival of the fittest here. It's STEP's survival through connection. You pause to place your hand on the redwood's bark. It's spongy, fibrous, and riddled with grooves deeper than your fingers. Fire scars run down its trunk like ancient tattoos, evidence of the blazes it endured and overcame. And here's something oddly reassuring. Redwoods need fire. The heat opens their cones, releasing seeds. Flames clear the undergrowth, making space for new life. What looks like destruction is sometimes just preparation for rebirth. Maybe that's SEPT true for you too. You trace a line down the bark with your fingertip, a gentle spiral, and think about your own scars, internal, invisible but not forgotten. Maybe they're not marks of damage. Maybe they sit growth rings. Behind you, a breeze threads through the forest. It carries the sound of rustling leaves, not as noise, but like language, liquid and ancient. There's a theory you once read, still debated, about how trees may generate tiny acoustic emissions through cavitation when air bubbles burst inside their xylem during water transport. Not something we can easily hear, but perhaps each tree has a subtle voice, and forests hum with these micro-songs. A chorus we cert, too loud to notice. But now, right now, your silence lets you hear what others miss. There it is again. Not words, not melody, but presence. You move forward, deeper, until the forest shifts again. It opens up. Not abruptly, but like curtains being drawn by unseen hands. And there, standing in a clearing kissed by moonlight, is a single gnarled oak. Wide, wise, weathered. Its branches stretch in every direction, as though it's reaching toward every version of the sky it's ever known, and around its trunk spiral carvings, not human ones, but the slow etchings of beetles, wind, lichen, and time. A story told in texture, not ink. You sit beneath its canopy and lean back. The night above is full of stars, not just distant fires, but pulsing memories, light that left home long before you were born, and only now arrives to meet your gaze. You wonder if the oak remembers starlight from centuries ago, if it recognized constellations shift as the earth wobbled slowly through the ages. That thought tickles something deep in you, a kind of cosmic homesickness. You breathe slowly. The forest, the stars, the soil, they're not separate. These are all versions of each other. You too are part tree, part cosmos, part question. Above you, 2 fireflies begin their slow, swirling dance. A tiny moment, fleeting, and yet you know it's part of something larger. You think of an old scientific mystery, still unsolved. In some forests, fireflies synchronize their flashing patterns over entire meadows. No one quite understands how. Some believe it's a form of emergent behavior, something beyond individual intent, like the forest itself, like love, like dreaming. You lie back in the grass. The oak's leaves whisper like the pages of a book being turned far away. And you listen, not for meaning, just for the feeling of being among things older, quieter, and wiser than yourself. Because sometimes the only thing you need to understand is that you're part of the story too. Your breath is shallow now, not from fear, not from fatigue, but from reverence. As if you've walked quietly into a cathedral made not by hands but by centuries. The forest feels impossibly vast here, as if it might go on forever, folding into itself in fractal patterns, each fern a mirror of an unseen whole. You sit up slowly. The great oak behind you remains, its ancient limbs cradling the air, but the clearing around it seems to shimmer slightly less like grass and more like memory. You rise again, barefoot in the loam, and take a few tentative steps forward, and as you do, something shifts. It's not the trees that change, but your perception of them. The trunks are no longer just vertical, silent forms. They feel like figures, like presences, each unique, each watching. You realize now that every tree you pass has its own resonance, its own rhythm, as though you're walking through a choir of giants, each humming their own note in an eternal harmony. You stop by a cedar, leaning just slightly to the east, and you feel a gentle pulse beneath your fingertips. Not physical, something deeper. There's a theory in the world of plant neurobiology, a field still considered fringe by some, that trees might possess forms of awareness, not consciousness in the human sense, but perception, a response to the world that is more than mechanical. One study found that when a caterpillar munches on a leaf, the tree not only produces defensive chemicals, but warns its neighbours through volatile organic compounds carried on the wind, a whisper network of scent and urgency. The trees are talking, but not to you, not directly. Still, they let you listen. And now you can feel it in the air, the way branches creak not only from wind but from subtle shifts in sap, in moisture, in communication. The canopy above seems to flex in response to your movement, like a shared breath. You wonder if you're creating ripples through the network just by being here. You pause beside a pair of intertwined birch trees. Their trunks spiral together like dancers caught mid-waltz. The bark, pale and papery, peels in thin layers, each flake like a fading letter. You imagine if you could collect them all and reassemble the pages, they'd spell out an epic of seasons, of droughts and floods, of tiny birds nesting and flying away. Your fingers brush their surface. You close your eyes, and for a moment, you feel their history. Not in words, not even in images, just in weight, as if time itself lives in their grain. You continue walking until you reach a grove where every tree is precisely the same age, height, and species. Their branches rise like cathedral ribs, interlocking high above. This is no accident. This was once a mother tree sept's doing. Forests often grow in patterns around central, nurturing giants. When these central trees fall, they leave behind a fairy ring of offspring, silent circles of connection. The stump of the mother tree might still pulse with nutrients, kept alive by her descendants, her roots still entwined with theirs, still feeding them, even in death. You stand in the center of one such ring now. The silence here is powerful, not empty, held. You press your palm to the center stump. Moss has claimed most of it, but the shape remains, a flattened spiral, its rings like ripples in water. You wonder what it witnessed. Maybe a lightning strike, a wolf pack hunting beneath the snow-heavy boughs, a child who once tied a ribbon here and forgot to come back. Your heartbeat slows to match something older, a pace that doesn't rush, a rhythm that remembers. And that sips when it happens. A small gust of wind rushes through the clearing, not chaotic, not loud, but purposeful, as if the forest is answering a question you hadn't asked yet. Some scientists believe trees also communicate through electrical signals in their root systems, slow pulses that can transmit over long distances. Others are skeptical. The data is muddy, the signals are faint, and yet you feel it. That low-frequency thrum, somewhere between sound and sensation. Like a thought that doesn't belong to you but arrives anyway. It whispers, stay. So you sit. You sit for what could be minutes or years. Time folds here, and you begin to wonder if a forest is left untouched for long enough. Does it begin to dream? Do its dreams rise through fog and dew, through sap and soil? Do they stretch outward into the fungal filaments of the Mycorrhizal web, the underground internet of the trees? Somewhere beneath your feet, those fine white strands are connecting roots to roots. They're sharing sugars, warning of drought, tracking insect attacks. A network older than humanity, more stable than any man-made system. And you're standing in it, not beside it. Within it. You start to smile, because the thought comes unbidden. The forest might have better Wi-Fi than your apartment, and softer chairs. The air smells like pine and poetry. You lie down again in the middle of the ring. Looking up, you notice the way moonlight breaks apart in the leaves. Like it too has joined the conversation. A flickering pattern, a signal, a song. No one sits decoded it. Maybe no one ever will. And maybe that sips the point. Some languages, Aren't sit meant to be understood, just felt. The sky above you has changed. It isn't just the passage of time or the subtle arc of the moon climbing higher. It's deeper than that. You can feel a shift in the atmosphere, like stepping from one room into another, except there are no walls here, only the silent reverence of trees. You rise again, slowly, as if your bones have started sinking with the roots below. A quiet strength courses through you now, steady, unspoken. You are no longer a visitor, not quite a native either, but something in between, a fluent outsider, an honorary thread in the silent weave of this wooded world. Ahead, the forest becomes denser, branches knit together, and underbrush thickens. You slip between them as though granted permission. This place feels different. The air is cooler, heavier, the scent of damp bark and ancient moss grows richer. You pause when the trees begin to lean inward, forming a kind of natural hallway, arched and shadowed, lit only by the flicker of moonlight slipping between leaves. And then softly, you hear it. Not the rustling of wind, not the distant trill of a night bird. No, something quieter, a kind of creaking murmur, like the low groan of a door opening very, very slowly. It saps the trees, or rather, the language of them. You're entering what forest researchers sometimes call the whispering zone, a term coined half seriously to describe areas of unusually high acoustic resonance among trees. In these pockets, wind seems to speak more clearly, sound travels strangely, bark cracks and echoes with startling clarity. Some believe these zones help trees hear the stress signals of others, stretches where communication is more efficient. Others think it's just a quirk of geometry and weather. But right now, under the hush of leafy breath, you don't care what science says. You believe. Because every creak feels intentional. Every sway of branch seems like punctuation in an unseen sentence. You reach out to steady yourself, hand brushing a tree whose bark is smooth and unusually warm. For a heartbeat, you think you feel a pulse. It's gone just as fast. But now you're listening differently. Not just with ears, but with skin, with your breath, with the space between thoughts. And then something even stranger happens. You begin to hear the forest as if it were a memory, not your own. Someone else sits. Something else sips. You catch flashes of life through smells and sound. A fox kit stumbling through roots. A storm breaking branches decades ago. The thump of boots from a time when axes rang in these woods. All of it hovers on the edge of comprehension, like a dream you wake from too soon. It's here that you stumble across a natural amphitheatre, a dip in the land ringed by trees so tall they seem to hold up the sky itself. In the centre, a rotting stump nearly 6 feet wide, the remains of a titan. You approach slowly. Moss has claimed much of it, but something about its shape tells you it once stood at the heart of this forest. Maybe this was a mother tree. Maybe the others still feel her absence. Or maybe she never really left. There's a fungal bloom growing in perfect concentric rings from her base, like waves radiating from a dropped stone. Biologists call these fairy rings. They often form from a single subterranean organism, an interconnected fungal network that could be decades or centuries old. One such organism in Oregon's Malheur National Forest spans nearly 4 square miles. It's one of the largest and oldest living beings on Earth, quietly growing beneath the forest floor. You wonder if you're standing in something like that now, not above it, but within it. You lie down at the edge of the stump, your back pressed to the earth, your eyes drifting toward the canopy, and then, no longer metaphorically, you dream. It's not a human dream, full of images and meaning. It's slower, deeper, like sinking into a vast underwater silence. You feel growth, not as a concept, but as an experience. Roots pressing forward with patient determination, leaves unfurling in humid spring air, rain soaking into bark, into soil, into cells. You dreaming like a tree. And in that dream you realize something profound. Silence is not absence. It's a choice, a mode of communication more respectful than speech. You sense, too, the way this forest balances cooperation and competition, saplings that help each other rise, branches that pull apart to let their neighbours drink sun, roots that share water, but also know when to keep it. This isn't utopia. It's dynamic equilibrium, a long-term negotiation. You chuckle softly, because isn't that the best we can hope for too? Not perfection, just harmony, even if only for a moment. The dream begins to lift, and with it, a voice, your own voice, asks the most gentle question. What have the trees been trying to teach you this whole time? You don't set answer right away, but your heart feels quieter, more certain, more rooted. You sit up as dawn begins to stretch its fingers across the forest canopy, turning everything gold and green and whispering. You don't know what time it is, or even what day, but you feel the forest exhale, and this time you exhale with it. Not above it, not outside it. Together, you stay a little longer, letting the hush of the forest hold you in place as light slowly returns to the sky. The trees are glowing now, not from within, of course, but the way early sunlight plays along their trunks, catching dew on their leaves and making the whole forest shimmer as if it's exhaling silver. And yet, it does feel like something internal, like the forest itself has decided to wake up gently, honouring your presence with one last soft spectacle. You stir not in a hurry to leave, because something inside you changed overnight, maybe not all at once, but like a slow curve bending towards something deeper, something more ancient. You take a few slow steps toward a clearing rimmed with ferns and flowering underbrush. There, a curious sight, a massive tree with scars all around its base, the telltale signature of past lightning strikes. Somehow, it's still alive, thriving even. This is a lightning survivor. Researchers have long studied trees like this, being struck not once, but sometimes dozens of times across their lifetime. And still, they grow. Some even sprout stronger limbs where old ones were lost, forming intricate, contorted shapes that twist toward the sky like calligraphy written in bark. You run your fingers along one of the scars. It feels holy, not in a religious sense, but in the way that ancient resilience always does. Like the world has been trying to knock something down for centuries, and it simply continues to rise. You whisper something to the tree, not in words but in tension. Thank you. And just like that, it feels like something replies, not in sound but in presence, a kind of answering stillness, the way old friends acknowledge each other without speaking. You wonder, as you so often have on this journey, how much of this is real, and how much of it needs to be. The answer is both. Because if trees can share nutrients, warn each other of danger, change their behavior in response to nearby kin, then surely your experience here matters too. Even if only to you. Even if only in dream space. You glance up to the canopy one last time and find yourself smiling, because it looks familiar now. Not like a roof or ceiling, but like a language you're just starting to understand. A symphony of shapes and sounds, of silence and shade. Some scientists say trees can recognize their own offspring and will preferentially send resources to them. Others suggest they mourn when one of their own dies. But no one knows for sure, and maybe that sips the point. Not to define everything, but to wonder, to live in the softness of questions. You step toward the edge of the woods now, where the tree line thins and the world opens again. A path unfurls in soft dirt and scattered leaves, inviting you forward. Behind you, the forest says nothing, but the silence feels warm, like a hand on your back. You walk slowly, breathing in everything one last time, the crushed pine scent, the distant rustle of squirrels waking up, the low hum of something ancient humming beneath your feet. You don't need to say goodbye, because forests, like memories, aren't left behind. They follow you subtle as breath, constant as heartbeat. You emerge at the edge of the world, stepping into day with the dream of trees still lingering in your chest. The whispering doesn't stop. It just grows quieter, waiting patiently for your return. And now, you let it all settle. Let the dream soften around the edges. Let the forest slip into a memory, not gone, not lost, just quieter now, like music playing from another room. Your breath finds its rhythm again, slower, softer, as if even your lungs have learned something from the trees. Because maybe they have. You lie back, wherever you are, and feel the echo of roots, how they hold the soil, how they never rush, how they trust the darkness just as much as the light. The canopy fades gently behind your eyes, replaced by the steady beat of your own thoughts growing slower and slower still. You remember the way moss felt underfoot, the hush between trees, the way certain leaves seemed to know you were watching. And maybe, just maybe, they did. Let that thought be enough for tonight. Let it keep you company as the night folds in around you, soft as pine needles, wide as ancient forests. You, sir, not alone here. You never were. So go ahead, drift deeper. No need to hold on to anything. No need to understand it all. Let the roots carry your dreams now. Let the branches guard your sleep. And when you wake, maybe you still hear them, whispering, waiting, welcoming you back to the silent language of trees.